Yo, creeping in the dark, life nocturnal, dark and dark, both paths arboreal to terrestrial. Sticky toes gripping forest students that explore. Listen close, Gecko podcast, that's knowledge galore. Reptile talk, host Anthony and Jason. Trade secrets flow, no time wasted. From tropics to town, it's sight raining. With every chat, reptile game changing. Escaping heat waves, tan under rays, desert sand echoes, sun blazing days. Little hustlers, camouflage a maze, catch them speaking wisdom, the wild on replay.
Welcome back, everybody. What's going down?
Welcome.
Yeah. So we got a superstar in the African gecko world, Mr. Seth. Hey, Seth, why don't you go ahead and kind of introduce yourself and kind of let us know, how'd you get into these African fat tails? What made that your passion right there, man?
Yeah, what's up, guys? My name's Seth from Huff's Herps. We got into fat tails in 2015 whenever we first got into the breeding side of leopard geckos, because we had started kind of a leopard gecko project just with some average Petco stuff like a lot of people kind of dip their toes in with. And that when I say we, I mean my boys and I, who are now 16. At the time, they were probably 3 when we first got the first geckos.
Nice.
And we hatched something kind of cool out of that trio. It ended up just being a blizzard, which ends up not being as cool as I thought it was at first, obviously. But when I didn't know anything, I was like, oh my God, I just hatched something new with leopard geckos. This is going to be awesome. But then that got me diving deeper into the rabbit hole and realizing that there was more of a genetic side of things and more of like a, different level of breeding with leopard geckos, where they had like, the pet store stuff and then the higher end, more detailed stuff. And so that got my interest peaked, and we went to our first expo to try to, acquire some higher end breeding quality leopard geckos. And at that expo, we did pick up a couple of leopard geckos, but at that same expo, they had some fat tail geckos. And one of my sons, at this time, they're like 5, I guess. And one of them loved the color blue. That was his favorite color. And we walked up to this table and we were looking at the leopard geckos that he had. And he also had a handful of fat tails. And he had some whiteout fat tail geckos. And I don't know if you're familiar, but a lot of the fat tails, whether it be even some of my normals, but especially some of the morphs, have a lot of bluing on their tail. And it's just in a certain section, about a third of their tail, that whiteout patternless that you just passed up on the right side of the screen. If you go back down just a little bit, that one bottom right. That one right there, you can see, you can see the bluing on her tail pretty good at the tip of that tail. And what that is, I was really curious about that for a long time. I'm sorry, I'm getting off on a little offshoot, but
no, you're good. Go ahead, man.
There's actually a stone in their natural region that is that same exact color. And the way I found that out is talking to a big importer at one of the big reptile expos. We're hanging out outside after the show. And he got to telling me about one of the first pattern lists that were collected that his importer had offered to him and that he had pictures of it. And I was like, dude, that'd be cool to see. And so he showed me a picture of this gecko, and I barely even looked at the gecko. Right away, I grabbed his phone and I was like, hang on, let me see that. Because there was a little bitty blue stone right next to that gecko of this picture taken in its natural range before it was collected. And that stone was that same exact stone blue that I've never seen any other similar color as I do on these fat tails. So I'm convinced that's just a natural evolutionary camouflage, because the other really interesting thing about fat tails is almost all of the genetics that we have that we're working with came from the wild. There's only one of the morphs that were like popped up in a collection, so to speak, when we're talking about actual genetic traits. Now, there's some polygenetic traits. Like I have a couple projects that are, have evolved inside a collection, but all of the like simple recessives and the incomplete dominants and stuff like that we have to work with the fat tails all came directly from the wild. So that's just to say that there's still a lot to be learned with these guys because they only just started importing those genetics. I want to say in like the around like 2008 is when most of them started coming in. So I mean, in the world of the reptile world and genetics and all that, that's kind of infantile. You know what I mean? Um,
Very neat.
so I think there's still a lot to be learned with these guys and a lot to be done for sure. Um, But anyway, what were we getting to? Oh yeah, so that's why we bought our first fat tail was because my 5-year-old loved the color on this blue, and I was like, dude, we're not ready for fat tails. We've researched leopard geckos and doing those guys. I'm not ready to jump into those. And the breeder, of course, assured me that they were exactly like leopard geckos, which I disagree with. But and so we were actually staying at that expo for 2 days for the whole weekend. So I took that night and kind of just did a little bit of crash course research that night and decided by Sunday that I did want to pick up a trio, so I bought my first trio of fat tails. And so we had a trio of fat tails and a small collection of leopard geckos. There was probably 12 or 15, 20 animals at total. And so that's how we started. And we grew very slowly from there. And that's kind of been the snowball that got that rolling was getting that first trio and seeing how chill they were because their personality really is more laid back than leopard geckos by nature. Most of my fat tail geckos I can put in the hands of a 10-year-old at an expo and sit there and teach them about this gecko, and that gecko will just curl up in their hand and pretty much go to sleep. And there's not many species of geckos you can do that with, especially when you're talking about a young gecko, not even an adult that's been around for a few years and has learned to trust everybody. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
so that's definitely one thing that drew us to them because my boys have always been a huge part of our collection and taking care of the animals with me. And so the leopard geckos kind of stress them out a little bit because the babies, as y'all know, are pretty flighty and kind of anxious at times for the first couple months of their life. And so they always kind of gravitated towards the fat tails, and so did I, obviously. So at this point, our fat tail collection is probably it's pretty much right at double my Leo collection. I produce exactly double fat tails as I do Leos. And we are just trying to refine a few projects. And I was telling uh, Jason earlier, I have a wild caught group or a few wild caught groups in my collection that I continue to produce, wild caught F1s and F2s from that stuff. And then I also use those F1s and F2s to integrate into my morph projects, my genetic projects. That way I'm constantly keeping the gene pool fresh and not letting it, get depressed.
Quick,
So that's something that I think is really important that a lot of people have kind of been missing for the last couple of decades of working with these guys, and I'm trying to really focus on a lot of that.
quick
Nice.
question, being that you're talking about the wild caughts you have. I know they're African fat tails, but are they found? Is there different locales, if you will, of African fat tails? Are they distinguishable by different locations in Africa, the continent?
Not to my knowledge, but like I said, we have all these different genetics that came from the wild, but it's kind of like the ball python world where like whenever they were first import or not first, but whenever it got really big and they were importing a lot of fat tails, they didn't keep track of where all the different ones were collected. They just put them all in a box and shipped them. And so but I have heard people talk like I've talked, I don't remember who it was I was talking to that said they lived in Florida and did a lot of like unpacking of that's a badass gecko right there. I have her on my table to show y'all right with me later.
This
Um,
one?
yeah, that one. That's a striped whiteout AML patternless fat tail, and she is dope.
Some of these things are insane. They rival the Leos, man. Like, I
Well,
mean,
that
better.
that's actually a really young picture of her. She's way brighter now. She looks awesome.
Oh yeah.
Um,
So do they get brighter as they mature,
uh,
or
to,
is it
to a point,
okay?
it's just like leopard geckos. They kind of have a peak at a certain
Hmm.
age and weight, and then after that, when they hit their first ovulation, they'll kind of like fade out just a little bit, and then that's kind of their color for the rest of their life in general. Some lineages fade out a lot more than others. Some lineages of like
Okay.
A males will end up pretty much white at the end of the day. So It just depends.
Yeah.
But
So
the to answer your question, I have heard stories of certain geckos that were unpacked from wild caught collection or wild caught imports that were really huge, that were like huge African fat tails, like the size of your forearm. Um, I've heard we have wild caught lines in our collections that are like we have a line called Granite that is like kind of a marbly look to them. Um, Even though they're tip quote unquote normal, they're brown on brown, and it's more of a polygenetic that we're finding it is. It's not a recessive or anything. Uh, but it's still that has to come from somewhere, right? So
Yeah.
oh,
I would imagine that there is definitely some locale specific traits, but we don't know what they are. Is the really long answer to that question? Sorry.
No, awesome, great, great. I mean, you've thought about it. It just dawned on me. I mean, I know nothing about these things. I mean, I think it's amazing. I think just from last night, I'm not going to lie, I was looking at your page and looking at some of these things, and I was like, I couldn't believe that they weren't leopard geckos. I'm like, this is what they've done with African fat tails. Like, holy
Right?
crap! Like, I
yeah,
mean, it's
yeah. I
amazing.
was talking with Seth behind before we went live. I was like, dude, I couldn't tell, African fat tail from these leopard geckos from the stuff that you're producing. You know, uh,
Insane.
no. So let's get into so what does their natural habitat look like? So what kind of environment? What's those day-to-day conditions that they would live in over there?
So the majority of fat tails are from like the coastal regions of West Africa. So basically like very, very similar and same regions as where the ball pythons are from. They spend a lot of their time in termite mounds. I'm sure evacuated termite mounds, retired, Um, and they do most of their hunting and exploring either at dawn and dusk or at night. You don't see them much at all during the day. And they're insectivores primarily, but they will eat, tiny newborn rodents if given the opportunity. Um, the big males are big enough too, but I don't do it. I used to feed some of my females newborn pinkies during the middle of their season, but I lost one girl a couple weeks after I had fed her a pinky, and at the time I kind of attributed it to that. In hindsight, I don't think it probably was that, but I just kind of stopped doing it. I've never messed with it again since then. So I feed all my fat
Okay.
tails primarily crickets, but then especially the females get dubia roaches and mealworms during their season whenever they're laying. And my babies, I start on dubia roaches, and then they're offered like small to medium mealworms whenever they're
Okay.
very young.
Nice.
What's your supplementation look like?
I use Repcal brand. I've always used that brand just because it's what I started with, and it's never done me wrong. I use calcium with D3 for everything, well, for all these guys, and I use the Herptivite. And I also add a little bit of vitamin A plus. I don't necessarily recommend that for just somebody keeping them as a pet, but if you're trying to produce them, for the females, I feel like it does a little bit of good for potential eye issues in the babies and whatnot. Um,
Okay.
but it's very, very tricky to supplement that. So like I said, I don't recommend adding that just if you just have a few and you're not really trying to produce out of them. Um, and I give them I'll be honest, I kind of over supplement because talking with my vet who's very well versed in exotics, um, this type of gecko, I know it's a lot different for other types of geckos, but this type of gecko, they would pretty much just pass any extra nutrients that they don't need, very similar to how our bodies do. Um, as long as you're sticking to the standard, like I said, calcium and standard Herptivite multivitamin. Um, there's obviously other things that they can have overdose on, but with those two things, I pretty much dust every feeder with about a 1-to-1 ratio of those two on my fat tails.
Okay.
Now the babies I don't give as much multivitamin. I give them mostly calcium with just like a trace of multivitamin. Um, but the females especially get plenty of both.
Nice, awesome.
So, go ahead.
Is there any I'd imagine what's the specific reason you're using the vitamin A? Like, what would that achieve? What is your goal with
Um,
vitamin?
well, I was taught by another breeder friend of mine, that it definitely can help with if you have eyelid issues or eyeball issues with your babies. Um, that that can be a big factor there of if they don't have enough vitamin A in their regimen. Um, so that's why I started using it in my leopard gecko breeding, and I just kind of carried it over to my fat tails as well, because I just do that with all my multivitamin now for these guys, for the Leos and the fat tails. And at this point, I'm having a really great success rate with my hatches as far as the babies being really, really healthy and not having truncated tails, which we'll get to that in a little bit too, what I figured out that is. But and having really healthy eyes and full eyelids that, every now and then you'll hatch a baby gecko that's supposed to have eyelids that has like crinkled eyelids or messed up eyelids or something like that. A lot of times we'll see that in the leopard geckos occasionally, and that's thought to be a big factor there is that vitamin A.
So you think that it is supplementation and you know poor nutrients as opposed to like morph specific? Do you find any particular morphs
Oh,
are more prone to birth defects?
with the fat tails
Yeah,
specifically,
yeah.
um, I have seen some weak lines of certain morphs, meaning some lines that you can tell were definitely genetically depressed just from how non-productive some of the females are from those lines. We do have a few morphs. You just passed up that ghost in the middle, just at the top of your screen, a little bit higher up. That whiteout ghost right there. That morph right there, the base morph that's in that makes the colors that color. Those females, the visual females, are all infertile. You can breed
Oh
them,
wow.
and they won't even lay duds. They'll just reabsorb their follicles. Um, and sometimes with the ghost morph, they can actually get really bad egg binding if you try to breed them. So it's like really frowned upon to try to breed the visual female ghosts. So those just get labeled as pet only and sold at a lower price than a male ghost would be because they're kind of out of the breeder's circle, right? And then, but everybody loves the colors of them. They're gorgeous. They're like a purple. They're a peach and purple gecko, man. And they don't have any other issues. They're not that specific morph isn't light sensitive or anything. That's just the thing is that the females are infertile. So you just have to if you're trying to set up a group of those and you want to produce any, you have to have het females, and then it's best to have a visual male. That way, any non-visuals you produce are going to be 100% hets. Um, but and then also the caramel morph is another morph, and it's kind of coincidental. Also has infertile females, and that's more of like a pink coloration morph. Um, it'll be hard pressed to find any recently on my page because I don't produce a whole lot of them. Um, I've kind of leaned more towards the ghost morph if I'm because when you're working with either one of those projects, you kind of have to have that to dance around with the visual females being infertile. So it makes it a little bit more complicated to set up projects and set up groups and all that. So I generally I've just kind of leaned more towards the ghost project than the caramel. I still have some caramel stuff, but I'm not producing as much of it.
Shit.
But
Oh,
that's the
did
only
you
real
lose him?
problems that we see
Yeah, you didn't hear
is
him breaking up.
those couple of
Yeah, I
main
heard him breaking up.
issues. Are y'all still there?
Oh, he'll get back on. Man, no, yeah, definitely. There's some crazy stuff on here. Like honestly, I didn't know anything about really about African fat tails, like especially like all this genetic stuff. And like I said, like most of this stuff, like when I look at it, like this orange one right here, like honestly, I would thought that was a
Just
tangerine
gonna say,
leopard
how do you
gecko.
even tell? How can you tell? What are you looking for? How would you tell me? What do you look for, Jay? If you were looking at that group right there, how do you say what a difference is between a leopard and that? There he is.
Well, he can explain it right
Sorry,
now.
guys.
No,
Sorry,
you're all
guys.
good.
All
Hey,
I
right,
don't know where
Seth.
you lost me at.
Hey, how
middle of the
about can you
ghost.
tell us a little bit about how can you tell the difference between like the leopard geckos and African fat tails? What are like those characteristics and stuff like that? How can you tell the difference?
So yeah, what I tell everybody at the shows is the fat tails have a little bit stubbier frame and shorter limbs. They have a shorter snout. They have bulgier eyes, and their tail isn't as quickly tapered because it's kind of deceptive. Their name is kind of deceptive, and I think they got their name from the regrows that get so obsessively fat. But an average weight fat tail gecko doesn't really have a huge tail as compared to a little bit overweight leopard gecko. So a lot of people do get them confused, but that's one thing. Even if they are the proper tail, you can tell that it has a little bit slower taper to it, so it's not as pointed as a leopard gecko's tail, um,
Okay.
but not as significant as you might think. Like I said, I think the name kind of comes from the regrows that are really bulky and look a lot like the head. Um,
Yeah.
but that's the main things, and that's once you have them in your hand, it's very, very easy to tell the difference because the fat tails are a gecko that will just kind of melt into your palm pretty much. They aren't very flighty. And the most of them, you always have your outliers here and there, but the majority of them aren't very flighty at all. And they'll literally just kind of curl up in your hand and go to sleep. And so I call them just kind of couch potato cousin of the leopard gecko. They're a little bit more of an introvert. They're not going to be like begging to come out of their cage like a leopard gecko might. But
Yeah.
once you get them out, that's what you get. Whereas a leopard gecko, once you get them out, a lot of times they're like, let's go check out over here. Let's go see if I can hide over here. Like they're a little more explorative than a fat tail. So that's
Okay.
that's my comparison with those guys.
Seem like
Um,
they'd be great pets, like a perfect pet animal. I mean, almost more so than a leopard gecko, to be completely honest.
Honestly, if I'm dealing with a family that I can tell that the parents are going to be fully involved and everybody's got good heads on their shoulders, you can tell whenever a family walks up to your table whether they're kind of just there or whether they're really there and fully involved with the process and want to do this with their kids. And if that's the case, I usually steer them towards the fat tails for that reason, because I know that a 3-month-old leopard gecko, if they put that in that 5-year-old's hand, it's going to be all over the place and it's probably going to lose a tail, even with the handling that I do prior to selling them. But a 3-month-old fat tail, well, I don't really sell fat tails that young, but a 6-month-old fat tail, which is about the same size as a 3-month-old Leo, will literally just curl up in that kid's hand and go to sleep. And so they are, in my opinion, a better or a better choice in that scenario, as long as, like I said, the parents are fully involved and going to be really, because a fat tail will also dehydrate a lot easier than a leopard gecko. So you have to be really on point with your water, have to be really on point with your humidity in your humid hide, and make sure that their temps are they have a smaller temp window. So they are a little bit more advanced, but not by any means an advanced keeper. They're just not as bulletproof plug and play as a leopard gecko. That's the best way I can explain it.
Makes
But
sense.
they are very similar to a leopard gecko. Like my setups are almost identical. I just keep my humid hides wetter and I keep them more fresh water. And I keep their temps a little bit more down, a little bit higher basically, because a leopard gecko really only needs about 85-degree hot spot, 88 at the most, and my leopard gecko, my fat tails, I keep it about a 90 to 95-degree window on in their hot spot, like hide. So that may call for a hotter basking temp if you have them set up. Like I have this naturalistic aquarium behind me. I don't know if you saw on my YouTube channel. I'm kind of starting a little experiment where I'm going to try to breed in bioactive 40 gallons. So I'm setting up this whole wall behind me is eventually going to be just stacks of 40 gallons on racks
That's
in
awesome.
bioactive enclosures that is going to eventually contain. I'm going to start off just putting one male in each enclosure and letting them get settled in. And then eventually I'm going to try adding at least one female to each enclosure that belong with that male genetically and see if I can breed in groups of pairs or
Breaking
even
up the
trios
camera.
successfully and oh man. You want me to just leave again and come back?
No, no, no. You
No, you're
sound good
good right
now. You're
now.
just
I
chopping up.
I don't know why it's doing that. I'm on my landlord's Wi-Fi. um Anyway, I'm trying a little experiment where I'm going to try breeding these guys and seeing if I can do it efficiently or even more efficiently and productively in these bioactive enclosures with the heat lamp for the heat source and the UVB and all that, and see if I can do a whole different style of this with about half of my fat tail collection. It's basically what it's going
Damn
to
cool.
encompass.
I love it.
And
I love
so
the idea.
that's going to give me that's going to give me a really, really good, sample size of each to be able to see like, okay, yeah, this is a lot harder. It takes up more space, but hey, guess what, guys? I'm getting better production out of my females now in these, if that's the case. I don't know what's going to happen. The one pair that I have set up so far, she laid one clutch and that was it. But that was a different scenario. That was a wild caught pair that was long term captive that just wasn't doing well in the rack situation. So they kind of were already halfway through their season and not doing great whenever I put them in that cage. Now they're doing great, so they are thriving better. So that's definitely a good sign there as far as that specific pair of wild caught long term captive. They're about 4 years old, I think, and I acquired them in a collection that I got. So that was kind of the spawn of doing the bioactive experiment because I had that pair that weren't thriving in the rack situation, even though I had them in a really big tub together like they had always been. But the girl I got her from told me that she was like, they're not going to do good on a rack. I was like, okay, well, that's what I have right now. So that's what I'm going to have to try. And I'm going to go from there. And they didn't thrive on the rack. And so that's why I had to do at least the first bio. And whenever I went to get the cage, PetSmart had a 50% off sale they were running on their glass. So I kind of went overboard and got a lot of tanks. I got like 10 40 gallons and 8 31 gallons, which are the same footprint, just shorter. And they're really nice front open Thrive brand. They have a really nice heavy duty mesh that has a lot of good structure to it. And so I have all the glass already purchased for this project. And now it's just a matter of getting all the other materials in place to be able to do it. I want to do it like kind of all at once. Like obviously I'll have to do it in stages, but I want to do it as compact as possible. That way my experiment side of it is more like, hey, these guys have all been set up like this for this long and it's all a little bit more streamlined. Does that make sense?
Controlled study, for controlled study, gonna have to,
Right.
But what do you plan on using for substrate in those, man? I love Thrive. I mean, it's kind of like a budget brand, I guess you would call it in enclosure world. I love them myself too, man. I think that they're great. There's no difference between them and the Exoterra stuff. I have these are Thrive behind me, 36 by 36 by whatever's. I love them.
I would argue there is a difference. I would argue they have a better front open spring latch, and if you don't have a diurnal species that needs really bright lights like a Euro or an iguana or something, that mesh, like if you have a crepuscular species like we're dealing with, that heavy duty mesh on top is the bomb. But with the diurnal species, I could see it restricting some of your light to where it wouldn't be ideal. I have heard that complaint from people, but yeah, I love the Thrive. Substrate, I'm kind of experimenting with that. What I did on that first one is, I basically took I build bios for the expos. I build like new cow bios I sell gargoyle geckos that my boys breed. And then my best friend Carl at South Texas Gex breeds leechies and gargoyles and Sarahs and all that. And then another good friend of mine breeds Cresties. So I build bios that I sell at the expos with all of our geckos. And for that, I have a mixture that I kind of do myself that's mostly peat moss and sand and leaf litter and sphagnum all mixed up with a little bit of charcoal and like crushed charcoal. And then I added some excavator clay.
It's froze for sure this time.
Man, I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah. No, he was telling me about that. You're all
here?
good.
You're back.
I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, you're here.
For this cage here, I added a bunch of excavator clay to that mixture, and just to kind of firm it up a little bit, I wanted more of a compact, cage overall. And then what I do is I add a really large humid hide in there that's about half full of my typical mixture that is just jungle mix and sand that I use for my humid hides. And I like the jungle mix because it's mostly peat moss, which inhibits bacterial growth. mold and bacterial growth, so that's a great substrate to use, but it definitely needs a little bit of sand with it to have the right drainage. So that's what I use for this one. For this next one, this next batch, I bought some Exoterra, some new stuff from Exoterra. I don't know how new it is. It's called like Desert Blend
I've
or
seen
something like that. Hang on, let me go grab a bag. It's sitting right there. Hang on just a second.
Fuck.
Better pay that landlord,
No,
Always right when
Stone
he's
Desert.
getting into something good too, man.
right?
That's
So I
cool.
picked up
His
a couple.
buddy, the one he just mentioned, South Tex
Yeah,
Dex,
yeah,
is
yeah,
who I keep
yeah,
I'm trying to get for the Sarahs, man. Rob
yeah.
keeps telling
Well,
me he makes
like I said, yeah, he said, hit him up if you need him. Damn, this
Am I
thing is
back?
fucking overflowing. But
Am I back? Sorry,
yeah,
what's
guys.
that Inside the Hide? Is that another podcast? See that right there?
yeah.
Yeah, that's an older
This
podcast.
was like
I
63
don't think
weeks
they're
ago,
still
so I don't even
rolling.
know if they're
Yeah, I
still
don't think they're
going.
still doing anything.
IG Live tonight. So I wonder. He said he has an IG channel. Or a YouTube channel. I wonder if.
Yeah, I just saw it too.
Did you?
Can
I
y'all hear
didn't know
me?
he did. I'm about to go follow right now. I didn't even know he had it.
Yeah,
Hello. Can y'all hear me?
It's got to be under the same name, right? Huff's
yeah, yeah,
Herps.
yeah, yeah. I think I put it under the show notes too.
Oh, word.
Yeah,
Huff's Herps popped right up.
there
There
you
he
go.
is.
Well, before.
Told you, gotta
Can
pay
y'all
that
hear me?
landlord.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can hear
we
you
can
I
hear
good.
you.
know, right?
Just
Look, this
subscribe
is
to
that
your
this
YouTube
is that
channel.
Stone Desert. This is that
Yeah, yeah,
Exoterra
yeah.
Stone Desert that I just picked up. I'm gonna add this to that next batch and see if that is a better mixture because that excavator clay is kind of pricey.
Yeah, I think I've used the stone stuff before. When they had I think they got like a red one as well. Because I
Yes,
think I
yeah,
mixed.
they
Yeah,
have. I think they have three different colors. This
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
I think this is the
That's the
like
black one,
black.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
I
is
use the red
the.
one when I do for my for my stropharis. I love that stuff. Like I
See
just
a
mix it with
few.
some other dirt and stuff like that, just to give it a little bit more color.
Yep.
Or give the dirt some color. It looks like
Hmm.
it's pretty much out in the Northern Territory.
Cool, cool. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm shooting for. I'm hoping that that's a good additive to do
Using
the
anything for
trick.
them to climb? What are you doing for like a background? What do you know about these guys? I know you said they like the
Um,
termite mounds, but climbing a little arboreal, a little. What do they
what
do?
I have. What I have on this one, actually, look, I'll show y'all this one right now, real quick. I'll just walk over there. What I have this one set up with is just a little
Oh, I
a
see it
half cork
already.
round
Badass.
going all the way across, and then they have this little spot back here. It's a little warmer hide, but their hottest spot is right here, and they're always right here all day long. And
Badass.
that brings me to an important point that I'm gonna get to about supplementation. I mentioned I use D3, and I also recommend using D3 even if you have them in a naturalistic enclosure with UVB because they're not gonna be out in that UVB using it. And so I don't see how it's gonna, you know what I mean? I don't see how they're gonna get their D3 from the UVB if they're never, and I'll hear people say, oh, they'll crepuscular or they'll, what's it called?
Cryptic bass.
Cryptic bass, which yeah, I know
Yeah.
some species do that. Listen, I've had these guys set up for like 3 months now like this, and I've seen them both each out one time, and it was like literally going from that big hide to that little hide, like just a split second out. Otherwise, they're always in there. They only come out at night whenever I'm not around. But that's this particular pair. Again, they're a long-term wild captive. They're a little bit more anxious than my other ones. So I'm anxious to see or excited to see how much different it is once I
Fuck, you went mute. There you go.
because I'm on a podcast.
Hey, no, you're all good, bro.
Life.
I
Bud.
love her. I love
Yeah,
her.
there you go.
Now, side note, I use D3 too with a lot of animals. I use UVB on for that same reason. I can offer it, but they're not out in it all day. And
Yep.
some of the animals like my chihuahuas I use it on are notorious for having calcium issues. So I always ran D3 with the vitamin D, the calcium with the vitamin D and the UVB for that reason. I've never experienced any of the issues that they're notorious for. And I always wondered, in my head, is it because I'm doubling them up by giving them a stronger, more of an ability to absorb, I guess?
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting fact. People think UVB. I mean, they're not in the UVB. So if it's UVB strictly that's helping them synthesize the D3, and they're not in the in the UV light. I mean, what does it do? My Nephurus. These things will not come out if there's a night light on. These Nephurus don't come out. I can have
For
D3 on
sure.
them, and I do UVB on them all day. It's not doing a damn thing.
Yep.
I get
No,
the point. I think a lot of people are
I,
missing that.
I think that's a big thing that all these advanced husbandry groups are missing. It depends on the species. If you've got an animal that's out basking in all day long, of course you don't need D3. And yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it could do them some harm. Although I think today's supplements, that whole thing is kind of overhyped. But yeah, especially a crepuscular or nocturnal species, I don't understand not using D3 because it's not going to hurt them. It can definitely do some good.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's how I'm gonna pretty much do all of those enclosures almost identical to that. I want them to be kind of cookie cutter again because I'm kind of doing it as a little bit of an experiment, and I want it to have a good. And that's just how I am. I just like everything. Like
Yeah,
I'm very, very, very like
yeah,
you.
anal, man. He's like
Yeah,
symmetrical.
dude.
Everything's got to be
Yeah,
the same. It's got to
yeah,
happen the same way,
yeah.
dude. What are you
Yeah, I
gonna? How
like
you gonna
that.
rack them? What are you gonna put them on? Do you have a design? How you gonna stack that many tanks?
I already bought a big from Costco. They had a big rack. I think it's made by like Gorilla or something like that.
Same thing.
Um,
I just got the yellow
is that
one, but
is
the
that it?
same ones. Yeah, they're
Dude, you can
badass.
fit 240 gallons right next to each other, just barely. I mean, you don't have a
Damn.
centimeter to spare, but you can fit 240s on each shelf right next to each other. And so I'm gonna do two of those. So that's gonna be nine. No, that'll be 12 tanks because it'll be 6 tanks per rack. And then I'm gonna do,
Awesome.
and then I'll have room for this rack that's already back there that I'll be able to do 3 more. So I'll have 15 total on this wall. So I want it to have more of like a zoo feel when you walk into my shop. Cause this isn't like I don't have it open to the public, to the pet store or anything, but whenever we have hometown expos, all the friends, my fellow vendors come over and we drink beer and just hang out at the shop and kick it.
Nice.
And whenever I have local customers that aren't ready to pull the trigger at the expo because they're just dipping their toes, but they definitely want something, I invite them to make an appointment with me and come out and meet me at the shop. So people do come here, and I want it to be really impressive whenever you walk in here and just be like, whoa, this is like a different thing, you know? And that was kind of
That's
inspired by
really
a friend of
smart. I like
mine.
that.
Y'all actually should check out the friend of mine that inspired that like idea in my head of how I want this whole front room to be. Her name is Brittany Reed. She's gonna kill me for this. And she's Heartbeat Reptiles, dude. She's got a really eclectic collection, all kind of cool stuff. Y'all really be into her stuff
Heartbeat
because she's
Reptiles,
got
guys. Check out Heartbeat
Heartbeat
Reptiles, man.
Reptiles,
Go show her some love.
Heartbeat.
Yeah, go follow that
She's a
right
really
now.
cool. She's a really, really cool chick and very smart, very, very smart.
Yeah.
I doubt y'all I could ever twist her arm to do something like this with y'all, but she's great to talk to. Um, but anyway, her shop that she had in Houston, whenever I first walked into I was like, holy shit, this is like a zoo. Like it's just badass tank after badass tank after badass tank, not a rack to be seen, you know? And again, I'm not going to get away from racks completely. I'm breeding on a pretty medium scale. And especially for the babies, I have to have a certain system of cleanliness and all that to be able to do it on the scale that I'm doing it.
So
I'm
what's that
anxious and I'm
collection looking
even,
like total, like number wise?
I've got about 400 geckos total. That's including babies. That's at any point in time in the year. It's kind of a fluid number because I'm constantly hatching and constantly selling. But
Yeah.
it's around 400 animals. That's the leopard geckos and fat tails included. I've got about 100 adult fat tails, about 30-ish males and about 60-ish females. They're all like full grown breeders. And then at any point in time, I've got a few hundred fat tail babies. And then my leopard gecko collection is, like I said, about half of that. I've probably got about 30 or 40 females and about a dozen or 20 males or so. And production wise, the last couple years, I've produced about 200 fat tails a year and 100 leopard geckos a year. So right at 300
Nice.
geckos a year.
That's
I
nice,
found that's
tender.
kind of my sweet spot, dude. About 2 or 3 years ago, I did 2 of each, and that was 400 geckos total, and it was too much. It was that extra 100 leopard geckos just made it too much for me to maintain on the level that I want to maintain it. Cause like I could have done that much and not had them as clean as I like to have them, but I don't like to walk in my shop and smell gecko shit. You know what I mean?
Oh
Like
yeah.
many people have told me that my shop is one of the cleanest collections they've ever seen whenever they come here. And that's
Beautiful.
just, I never stop cleaning, dude. I'm OCD about it. And it's how I have a process to everything and everything's like done on schedule. Even if I'm having a shitty week, I push through, you know, it's the animals first, you know?
Straight
Oh
up.
Um,
yeah. And it's just
Yeah,
you doing
But
this, or you got any help?
no,
before work.
I've got help. I've got my two boys. They're 16 now. This is
Oh,
their
perfect.
job. So like, oh,
Nice.
dude, it has evolved into exactly what I hoped it would. In that
Like a
now that
family
they're old
business.
enough, yeah, exactly. Now that they're old enough to need money for spending, for going on dates or going to homecoming or whatever, I can offer them hours because I always have shit that needs to be done here. There's always dishes to be done. There's always geckos to feed and clean. There's never nothing to do here. So they know now and are taking advantage of that in a good way of come and get hours anytime they have the opportunity when they have a few days off from school or whatever. They come with me to work and they stay here with me all day,
That's off,
and
brother. That's good
get their hours.
parenting, man. It's good parenting. You're raising men. Teach them responsibility. You teach them, to value a dollar. You're doing the world a justice.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that because I agree with that statement of like, I feel like it's each of our duties to just not raise little assholes, you know?
Fact.
Um,
Yeah.
Absolute fact.
if we have
Not
any
lazy little
contribution,
assholes. There's a difference.
yeah, exactly. If we have any contribution to this society, I mean, we can each do our own part in that. You know, if you do have kids, don't raise little assholes. That's like,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
but,
Give them a
but
good work ethic. I like that.
uh, on my side of things, it's been great because they have all the money they need to, like, my son bought a PlayStation the other day, like right before Christmas. My wife was like, why are you getting a PlayStation before Christmas? She's like, y'all ain't getting me a PlayStation, are you? They're like, no. She's like, well, I'm going to get a PlayStation.
God bless them,
But
man.
yeah, they, anything they need, I have for them. Anything they want, they have the money in their account for it. And if they don't have the money in the account for it, I have hours that they can come earn for it. They're
There you
about to
go.
start driving and they're going to have to work hours to pay their insurance. That stuff ain't cheap these days, man, you know?
I'm sure is.
Um,
No.
so it's a way that's keeping the money in the family, but I'm getting the help I need to keep the collection rolling, on a good pace. And then I
Put you
have one
guys together
helper.
too, man. Those are your boys, man. I mean, that's a family. That's a
Yeah.
that's a man. Again, hats off, dude. I
They,
mean, it's a beautiful
they don't
thing.
do a lot of the expos and stuff with me. They'll come do the local expo with me sometimes if I feel like I'm going to need their help. But they're at 16, they're kind of over that and usually have soccer tournaments or something like that whenever I'm out of town for the weekend. But,
Nothing wrong with that.
yeah, no, they live and breathe soccer.
Nice.
But
Nice.
yeah, it's definitely evolved into exactly what I hoped it would on that level. And then I have the oil field to fall back on as well. I was in the oil field before I started doing this full time. And so luckily I have a lot of contacts with that I can kind of lean on in times of need and get a little bit of work here and there. But I'm planning on kind of getting back in more here soon as they're going to be having their license and able to commit more hours to the collection because there's only so much that needs to be done at a certain point. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
if I can get to a point of having them in here and keeping it going at the clip it is right now, but still getting back on the rig and making the kind of money I was making before I did this full time, that'll be the best of both worlds.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's kind of what I'm shooting for right now. Cause it's been tough. I'm not gonna lie. It's been the best 4 years of my life as far as being with them every morning and taking them to school and spending good quality time with my family. But it's also been the most stressful 4 years I've ever spent as an adult. Like it's just, running a business is not for the faint of heart for sure.
Running a
I
business,
will
raising a
attest to that.
family. I get it, man. I get it. But you know what? You're doing it, man. You're doing it. It's one way. What are you gonna do? You do it or you don't do it, man. You do it. Go all in or nothing at all. So
That's
it's
how I am, man. For
yeah,
sure.
I respect it, dude. How did you at what juncture? I mean, I know it's kind of really. I mean, I obviously you appear to a lot of people like you've been doing this for a lifetime, but in all actuality, 2015 really isn't that long ago. Since you guys started getting these lizards to the point you are now, how was the evolution of you vending? I guess is what I'm getting to. At what point you say this is a business, this is what we're doing, this is it, business plan on paper, off to the races.
So sorry, I got a gecko that's all upside down in his cup. I grabbed a couple geckos out and put them on the table to show y'all later, but he's all like upside down on the side of his paper towel. Um, this was a pretty hardcore hobby for me for a long time from that 2015 mark, on until 2020. I was doing expos, I guess, like 2018 or so, 2019. Um, and then, like I don't know if I mentioned it earlier or not, but whenever 2020 happened and kind of the world ended for everybody, for a minute, I got laid off from the oil field, and my wife was just doing substitute teaching at the time, so she wasn't one of the lucky teachers that were able to just keep rolling through all that. So we went from like a decent income to no income. And so it was one of those points in my life that I was like, well, if there's ever been a time to try this, this is it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to like gamble and give up a career. My career just gave up on me for the third or fourth time. The oil field, that's just how the oil field is. You know what I mean? But so I saw an opportunity there to kind of dive into it without a whole lot of risk involved for the first year at least. And then it has just kind of evolved from there. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah.
Sorry.
How many shows
Oh,
are you
good.
attending?
About 20 these days. About 20 shows a year. I try to do about one a month, and then we have a local show that's like 6 times a year, and then another local show. Like, I'm in San Antonio, so we have a pretty big
Okay.
metro
Yeah.
area. So like, there's a little bitty local show that's like a hot show that has Venomous and stuff, and that's like a long time staple show it's in a Lions Club, dude. It's got like 40 vendors, if that. It's tiny.
Yeah, I've been there one time.
But it's a great show. It's a really
Yeah.
good show, and it's got a lot of variety as far as the vendors go, and it's consistent as far as the customer flow. So I do that one every time, and then we have another local show that's a little more in San Antonio. That one's 1 or 2 times a year, and then there's the big show, Reptilian Nation comes through to San Antonio as well. So I do that one. So that's all local shows. So that's like 8 to 10 shows right there. You know what I mean? And then other than that, I do a few of the Herp shows. I don't know if you've heard of that circuit.
Been
And
a few of those too.
yep. And then, let's see, what else? What do we do?
NARBC.
We used to do NARBC when it was in Arlington, man. We followed them to Dallas, and we did that first Dallas show. And I'm gonna be straight up honest, dude. Shit just ain't panning out. You know,
I heard that.
it
I heard it wasn't as good. I
dude,
haven't been
listen,
to it.
the first Dallas show was not good. And so the second Dallas show, their answer was to get the next room and open it up to as many vendors as possible.
Mhm.
I don't think it's working out that great. I may end up doing it. I may end up doing it again eventually, but at this point, I'm not really trying to do that one right now. But hopefully it turns around. If it does, as a business, I have to make it worthwhile to go, especially that show, because that show, and that's the thing, is that show is the biggest overhead of any of the shows for your table fees and everything. So to make it worthwhile to go do that show, they have to be bringing the house. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Because I can't just go and scratch or break even. You know what I mean? It's
I
not.
imagine you do well though, just bringing a variety. I mean, if you come out here to the East Coast and go to it, you're not going to find a table of fat tails. You may find leopard geckos, crested geckos, all that crap. But I mean, that's a nice addition to any show, man. To have a table of freaking African fat tails, dude. That's beautiful, dude. That's the type of change the hobby needs, man. That's
Yeah.
I'm hoping to branch out a little bit more and try to make some shows out there. I have heard that from a lot of people out on that
clean
end.
up out here. You clean up,
right?
There's
Yeah, I
nothing
mean,
but
I don't
California
see
stuff,
fat
ball
tails
pythons. You clean
really
up.
much at all. Like even my local shows, I don't see any. All I see is like the leopard geckos, the cresties, ball pythons, bearded dragons. That's predominantly most of what it is. You know,
Yeah.
so and every now and then you see some odd stuff and a bunch of wild caught stuff. I said I don't see African fat tails really ever when I go there. Do you?
Well, I
do
may
you
I
do
may
any
make it
out
out to
states?
your end sooner rather than later. Actually, I'm on the waiting list for one of those shows in Arizona.
Oh, at the Phoenix Reptile Expo.
I think that's the one. Is that the
Just
big one
watch
that's
out
out there?
yeah. Well, there's two big ones. So there's a Tucson one.
Tucson's what I was thinking of.
It's the Tucson.
Yeah.
It's the Tucson one, I
Okay.
think.
Yeah. I was gonna say just watch
What were
out
you
for
gonna
that
say? Watch
Phoenix
out.
one because if you show up one time and you don't show up the next time, they just cut you off.
Oh, they
Yeah,
blackball you?
pretty much. Yeah,
Damn.
they don't let you come back at all. If you skip out on one show, they're like, sorry.
Well, I mean, if they have a kick ass show, I'll be coming back. You know, that's how I am.
Yeah.
But
So
and if
how
I
many
don't come back, I
how
don't want to
many,
come back.
right? Yeah. So how many out of state shows do you generally do?
So I was just gonna ask.
We did this last year. We did Utah once. We did Denver. We did Atlanta.
Nice. Damn.
I think that's all we did last year. I did make it up to, we were talking about NRBC. I made it up to Tinley one time with my buddy Carl, just kind of guesting on his table. But I learned that that's a market that I'm not going to go back and mess with until I can like bring some of these new projects that I'm trying to kind of break the mold on.
Oh yeah.
Because that's the kind of show that's got, as far as just bringing a bunch of nice leopard geckos and some average fat tails, there's way too much saturation there to try to
Oh yeah.
make a splash, you know what I mean, without having something really bring.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Is there anybody doing what you're doing with these things? Like I have never. I don't think that I can name one other person that's doing African fat tails like this.
my buddy Nick at Lecco My Gecko, he's in Florida. He has some fire tangerine amel stuff. Some of my best amel lineage comes from him. Um, And then, but as far as like some of the newer projects that I'm working on, because like you have all your base genetics, which we can run through those if you want real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got Amel, which is a simple recessive, Oreo, which is an exanthic that's also a simple recessive. It just takes out all the reds and the greens and leaves you with grayscale. You got Patternless, which is also a simple recessive. Then you've got Caramel, simple recessive. Ghost, simple recessive. The caramel and the amel are both albinos, so they are both light sensitive. And but they don't have like red eyes visually. If you just look at them, they look like they have black eyes. You have to have just the right light on them to see the difference. But then if you combine those two genes and make visual double caramel amels, they're called the red eye fat tail. They make a bunch of them in Asia, and they actually have red eyes, like legit ruby red eyes. They're pretty cool looking. But I haven't gone for that combo because I can only imagine how light sensitive those are. Because both the caramel, the amels are light sensitive, and the caramels are even more light sensitive. That's another reason I'm kind of shying away from producing a lot of those guys. But I can only imagine those double combos are crazy light sensitive. But anyway, and then you have Stripe is a gene. I think it's an incomplete dominant gene because there's some animals out there that will produce only 100% stripes. So to me, that says it's a super stripe as far as the genetic side of things goes. And then they have Whiteout is also an incomplete dominant. And we know that for sure because the super form of Whiteout, which I don't know if I'm getting off track here with y'all, but like
Oh,
when
you're
you have
good.
an
We
incomplete
learning.
dominant,
That's what's happening.
all right, so when you have an incomplete dominant gene, if you put two of them together, 25% of the babies are going to be what's called a super form of that gene. And what that means is it's going to be basically a two copy of that gene. So picture it, if those codominant genes, picture them as recessives. If they were a recessive, they would be hets. But in this case, they're dominant so you can visually see the gene. But then when you put them together, 25% of those babies are going to be two copy of that gene, which makes a super. In this case, it goes from like a cool looking broken pattern that has like a lighter background to almost a white fat tail that's like crazy looking. But they don't live. If they do hatch, they die within an hour or so after being hatched.
Double lily
There's
gene,
been a lot of,
lethal gene.
it's just like the lily gene. It's very, very, very similar to the lily gene. I've talked a lot with my crested breeder friend about it, and it's very similar in that case, or in that aspect. There's actually a few similarities to the lily, but as far as like the variation as well, that's my favorite gene is the whiteout because it has the highest variation visually. Some of them don't look like much, and some of them you're like, holy shit, that's a fat tail.
There's the lily, man. My favorite gene too.
Excuse me. So that's pretty much all the genetics. Oh, and Zulu. Zulu is a pattern gene primarily. It connects the two bands and makes like an arrowhead shape pattern. It's really cool looking, and it also has a little bit of an effect on the color scheme. It's kind of like a little bit of a pastel-y look to it compared to a normal. And then you have some line bred traits. You have Tangerine as a line bred trait, so that's like a polygenetic. So that's just stacking, best to best to best to best, and you get better,
Okay.
And then you have Tangerine is a poly. I'm getting lost now. The granite that I mentioned earlier, it's like a marbled look to it. That's a poly. And then there's a gene called Zero, which is like where the bands are connected, but not in the way the Zulu is. They're connected with the whole band rather than just a little stripe of a band. And so they create like basically I think that's where the name came from. Is it looks like a zero on the back of the gecko whenever they're babies, or it's zero pattern. I don't know, whatever. Um, but those are kind of complicated, and I'm not fully on board with the prevailing theory of how that gene works. A lot of people say that zeros are like that. There's basically you can have a super zero that is the same exact thing as a patternless, which the patternless is a simple recessive. And so it gets really confusing. In my experience, I haven't found it to be really what they say it is, and that's the best like quick way I can summarize it. I think it's just kind of a polygene that is attached to the patternless gene in some way, like maybe on the same allele or something, not necessarily a different thing whenever you get to the end result, if that makes sense. Because I see people say a super zero all the time, and they look identical to a patternless gecko. But supposedly any zero is patternless, is part of that theory as well, which I haven't necessarily found that to not be true either. So like I said, I'm not fully on board with exactly how people say it works, but I don't really have any definitive proof to say anything otherwise. You know what I mean?
You're questioning it.
I don't really work with the gene all that much.
You're on the hunt for an answer. That's beautiful in itself.
Yeah.
So you said the ghost was the one
chat.
and
then
the ghost morph was the one that.
What's that?
The ghost and the caramel are both sterile. They are.
Yep, the ghost females, just the females, but the males are not.
Just the females. Okay.
Just the females.
Clearly. Okay.
And look, this is a really good expression of the ghost morph. I've grabbed this boy. He's my favorite boy from that gene. Look at that gecko. That's his normal color.
There we go. Yeah.
Is that like a lavender color there?
It's a true lavender. It's a true lavender in the banding.
Nice.
And so I'm working on a project that is, so you've seen the tangerine A males are bright orange with white banding, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to cross the ghost and the A male, and my goal is a neon orange and purple fat tail. Instead of this peach background. Yeah, this boy's pretty big. This is a pretty good sized gecko. He's one of my bigger males. Oh, chill out, dude. That's a ghost right there. That's one of my favorite morphs visually. They're really pretty.
Yeah, he sure as hell is.
And then I'll show you the A male. I should have been showing these off while I was talking about the genes, huh? Duh. Here's an A male. This is a really nice A male from one of my. This is actually from the A male ghost project. So she's possible het ghost. And so you got the bright orange background. So my goal is to make this more of a gray banding. Instead of that gray, I want it to be lavender.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm thinking the double visual will be somewhat to that effect.
We could please me and your kids and make them orange and blue. Get some of this royal blue in with that orange.
Yeah, right. Dude, I actually had a project that had some really nice tail bluing that I was thinking about keeping this pair to put together to try on a blue project. And I just have, there's only so many things you can do. You know what I mean?
Have you been able to get that? Have you been able to get that blue anywhere else in any of your projects? Have you been able to get?
Nope.
No.
Just in the tail.
Interesting.
This is a sister of the one I just had out. This is a whiteout patternless combo. So whenever you add the whiteout in there, it makes, normally a patternless would be like basically just kind of brownish, solid, but the whiteout gene kind of breaks up the pattern. And so it makes it actually have pattern, even though it's a patternless animal.
Super cool looking gecko, man.
Yeah.
That's a sister to the AML I just had out, so she's also part of the AML Ghost project. And then this one,
a simple double egg clutch, right? They're just laying two.
Yep, 2 eggs per clutch, and they lay a clutch about every 10 to 30 days. This is an AML patternless, so this is tangerine AML patty. 10 to 30. Most of them are around 10 to 15.
Wow.
That's crazy.
I didn't know
that's
they
the one
out
like
like
the
that.
one that was in that video, Jay. That thing is beautiful. I was looking at it in one of your videos, man. That thing is beautiful.
But their season is pretty short too. They only lay, I average probably about 6 babies per female per year on average.
Okay, so like
because some of them, well, it depends. Some females will give me 1 clutch and done, 2 eggs and that's it.
Okay.
And then if those are even good, you know what I mean? They're not as high of a fertility rate as leopard geckos in my experience either. Okay. The males are a little bit lazier as far as breeding goes. Some of them are like, yeah, okay.
Do you gotta kind of keep them because I know sometimes with other gecko species, is if the males, if they're a little bit too much weight on them, is it something like that where they're
I
like,
I definitely I definitely feel like they are a little bit better on the leaner side, honestly.
yeah,
I keep
yeah,
my males pretty athletic build.
yeah,
My
okay,
females, I try to, and the same thing with my females. I don't want any of my animals obese. I think that's one of
yeah,
the biggest problems in the reptile community is obesity and the problem
oh
that it
yeah,
causes long term for animals.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's
I
just
preach that to a
pet
lot of my
hobby.
customers.
Yeah, I think that's just an
Yep.
overall pet hobby right there. Because you'll see them
Yep.
like dogs, just like why is it so round? That's a pit. It should be a little bit
Yep.
more leaner, a little bit more muscular. It shouldn't be having this big old belly, things like that. But
For
yeah,
sure.
I think
Yeah,
they almost put their emotions onto their pets like that, where
of
they're like,
course they
I'm gonna
do.
keep
Hmm.
feeding you. I'm gonna give you bacon. I'm gonna give you this. I'm gonna give you that. It's like no, you need to give it a good diet so it lives a little bit longer than what it's supposed to.
Oh yeah. I tell people
For
all the
sure.
time, famine is more natural than fat. Famine
Yeah,
is
Yeah.
much more of a natural thing for an animal to go through than being
Yep.
fat and just prey for whatever they can't run away from.
This is one of my favorite geckos I produced last year. This is from the Mango Project. So this is just a line bred whiteout. So it's got a lot of tangerine blushings to it and a lot of bluing in the tail
hmm oh
That's
nice.
cool. It
and
reminds
just a
me of those
lot
like
of good
Indian
color.
blankets. Those like Indian
This is,
blankets with the patterns. They have like I don't know what the hell it's called, but like a Native American Indian style
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
blanket thing.
for sure.
So when you take all these genes that you were talking about and you start like crossing those genes and whatnot, that's when you start getting like different all these crazy morphs and stuff. You like
Well,
combine like
these are all different genes that I'm showing you. These are just like really good examples that have been kind of refined of each gene.
so what if you
And
took like a
then
tangerine and put it to a granite?
actually one of my buddies is working on that. That guy I mentioned, Nick Pupo, I think is how you say his name. He's in Florida. Lecco My Gecko is the name of his business. He's actually focusing a lot of energy on a granite AML, I think, moving forward. So that's going to be really neat to see. I'm excited to see that, him pop that out. But yeah, in theory, you'll get a really cool patterned AML that has a lot of neat modeling going on. Initially that gene kind of came out of caramel projects. So he's kind of working to isolate and then integrate, then reintegrate. Because that's the thing is some of these genetics are already all jumbled up. And so like one of my projects in here is just isolating the Zulu gene because it came in connected to the caramel gene basically, or not connected,
Oh
but
wow.
like we think that they imported caramels that were Het Zulu. And so like that's how Zulus popped up was from that caramel collection. And so in theory, or like in reality, every caramel is potentially Het Zulu and every Zulu is potentially Het caramel in the hobby
Okay.
The
because no
Zulu's
one's
the one with
taken
the
the
arrow on
time.
it.
Yep, yep. No one's taken the time to actually dissect them and isolate them, but I'm working on that. I've got a group of
Brilliant.
possible Het Zulus, because my theory is like, or my thoughts are, if something else pops up later on in the fat tail world, I've seen in the leopard gecko world, like you want to have isolated genes to be able to plug into these new genetics that come in, if you have something come in. And so I want to kind of be able to have that clean slate to work with on a couple of these genetics. I already have several isolated, I have AML pure, I have Oreo pure, I've got patternless pure. I've got most of them pure already, but that Zulu is one that nobody's really worked on that much. All right, I'm going to show y'all probably my favorite project real quick, and then we can move on from genetics if y'all want.
The
Because I don't
genetics
want to
gets
take
me
up.
going, man. I don't know if
I
I'll
don't
let
want to take up. Well,
you
oh
go.
wait, I got two more to show you actually. Remember the girl I told you earlier looked
That's the
better now?
stripe
Oh
one.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
So
I'm sure
that
the lighting
she
in
in
here
theory
sucks.
has blue on her, right? So she
Oh
technically has
yeah,
a blue tail with
she's got a
orange
blue
on. Yeah.
tail. Yep.
Be nice if you get that blue right up that stripe down her back, man. That'd be something.
Honestly, hers has a little bit of, with that whiteout gene that she has. You probably can't see it on there, but she
Yeah,
has a
actually,
little
we
bit of
can.
tracing on each side of
We
it
can.
that's
Yeah,
almost a little bit of a lavenderish, but
I
more of a
can see.
gray. And that goes
Yeah.
all the way up to her head.
See, if
Oh
they're making
wow.
it in part of
That's
their
dope.
body, some genetic or something is blocking it from
Oh yeah,
moving to
it's
another
there,
part of the body. There's
right?
something in the
Yep.
future. I guarantee you guys do it, man. I guarantee you uncrack the code.
Now
Okay.
check this out. Okay. So you've seen black knight leopard geckos, right?
I was just good.
Yep.
Yep. Wasn't gonna let the night go before I bring it up.
This this is my black velvet project, and this is the darkest one from the project this year. So technically, this is the darkest fat tail in the world, to my
This is a
knowledge,
fat
because
tail. See, because I wrote
This is a
comments
fat
on
tail.
your page last night. I deleted them all before everybody started bashing me because I just
These are
didn't know.
fat
So I was
tails,
like,
bro.
delete them. But this, I was looking at this last night, man, and I was like, there's no fucking way. There's no
These
way.
are fat tails. This is a fat tail. So this is a project that popped up in my collection a few years ago.
Damn.
Insane.
And it's just an Oreo patternless is all it is, but it's a very, very, very dark variation of Oreo patternless that instead of being silver, sorry, she's not very cooperative. Instead of being silver like they should be, they're staying, she's a freak. So you see that background coloration, that little silver
Yeah.
color there?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what her whole body should be as an Oreo patternless. But
Huh.
this group of animals are staying super, super dark. I'm gonna put her up. She's freaking out.
Almost like an Xanthic. Are her eyes blacked out too?
Her eyes are solid black.
Huh.
Well, kind of. They're not. If you look really close at a fat tail eye, most of them look really dark, but they actually have some structure to them if you look really close with the light. And then some whiteouts have a little bit of marbling to them, like you can actually see with your naked eye without a light. But this group of animals have pretty dark eyes, these black velvets. But yeah, all that is an Oreo patternless project that I was working on for size, because the dad of that project is my biggest gecko. He's huge. And I bred some daughters back to him and hatched a couple of sisters that were stupid dark. Not that dark, but really dark. And so I took those girls and put them back to him again. So now this is like 4th gen, right? And and she's not the only one. I'm getting some crazy dark stuff. Now, next season will be the first season that I'm putting dark to dark. And I'm expecting really good results.
That's exciting.
And I'm pumped about them for sure.
Good. I'll be
How big was
following
that male?
one.
He
How many
is
grams is it?
about he's about 100 grams. He's pretty lean.
Okay.
He's a long gecko, dude. He's legit, like from my fingertip to well past my wrist. He's a really long gecko.
Okay. And what's the average size of
Average
African
about
fat tail?
70. Average male's
Okay.
about 60 or 70, but the males range a lot. I've had some adult males that never got above like 35 grams and
Oh shit.
like not big. And they weren't like a run or anything. They were average sized growers and then they just stopped. Most males grow for about 2 years. And
Okay.
and the females also grow for about 2 years. I give the females till 18 months before I even look for ovulations, which is going to be their second round of ovulation. They go through their first cycle at about 6 to 9 months usually. So usually by around 18 months, you're usually catching that first cycle or that second cycle of ovulation. And there's just so much difference in body mass from that 6 to 9 month range. Even if you've got a really well fed 9 month old to that 18-month range, there's no comparison. I've broken that rule in the past for a few projects and I've almost had to pay for it. You know, I've had girls they go downhill way harder than leopard geckos.
Okay.
In comparison,
I
you
mean,
got to really be on top of their nutrition and feed the shit out of them and keep them well hydrated. You can't just set them and forget them like you can some animals. They definitely you have to what I tell people is to keep them, they're barely any different than leopard geckos. You have to just keep them a little more hydrated, a little more dialed in. But to breed them, they are definitely a much more advanced species to breed than a leopard gecko.
good to know.
The babies, if you don't have, did you have a question, bro? I'm sorry. I'm just rambling over here.
Who, me? No, I just
No, you're good. I was gonna ask you about
I'm sorry.
kind of get into this breeding stuff, right? So when does a like breeding season actually start for you, like for African fat tails? And then like, are
Uh,
you putting them through that like hard brumation like you would like a leopard gecko where they don't eat for a while?
so there's a lot of different debates about that. My buddy Nick in Florida swears by brumation. I've tried it once or twice and I had bad results. I had worse results with the animals I brumated. I did it kind of like I'm doing this. I did like half my collection I brumated and the other half I let roll. And the
Yeah.
half I let roll, I had better results with than the half I brumated with. So I've seen not great results with the brumation. So
Mhm.
I don't brumate my females at all. I just let them roll.
Okay.
And what I've found a big advantage for me to that is that my season is way more spread out. What I
Okay.
mean by that is the majority of fat tail females ovulate in the fall. So starting like around October or so, November. Okay. That's kind of the heavy season of them starting to ovulate. Well, by not brumating and making all of my females go at that time, I get a good portion of them that ovulate at that time. Like right now, I'm pretty as heavy as on babies as I ever am right now. All my racks are full right now. because I'm kind of at the peak of my fat tail season, first phase of 2025 season. Okay. But that started in October making pairs,
Business.
right? So then now I've got only a few girls laying, but then I've got a whole nother round of girls that are going to start ovulating soon. Unprompted, it's just their cycle, right? And so I'm going to have another 6 or 7 girls going here in the next month or so that'll be laying. And so I like it because it's a little bit of an influx here at the beginning of the year. And then it's kind of just a steady clip for the rest of the year of production to where I'm not overwhelmed. My most overwhelmed point of the year is like early summer whenever all my Leos have also just hatched. So I've got my fat tail season that's just humming along. And then Leo season comes in and goes, whoa, because they're all very season specific. So that's kind of my most busy time of the year is late spring, early summer.
That's also great for business, man. You know, to have a steady flow of babies like that, or to have them in the
Yeah,
wintertime
it
when
is.
technically everything else is, you know, juvies. You know, I mean, that's
For sure.
Bear with me, guys. I got to
No.
plug this thing in. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, I like it because it's not an overwhelming time of year. It's all just I'm busy as shit all the time. Don't get me wrong. I'm nonstop, but there's not ever a time of year that I'm like, oh, I just can't do this. Like, not that I don't deal with burnout. Everybody does. I was kind of dealing with it a little bit this week, to be honest. Times of the year, it's just a steady production rate for me, so it works out for me.
So when you're
But I
dealing with
don't
that
have a break
burnout, what are
time.
you usually doing? Like, so how do you kind of get through that burnout stuff? I know people probably need to hear this.
Honestly, the best thing for for feeling burnout is a really good expo. When you go to an expo and sell 20 geckos and meet all kind of cool people and have a good weekend and you come home with a little bit of money in your pocket, that's about the best thing for a burnout. But this isn't about money, obviously, because none of us would actually be doing it if it was for the money, right? What I like to do when I'm experiencing burnout is just kind of take a step back. I first of all focus on my care because that's the first thing that tends to go when we get depressed or feel emotional about things is our daily chores, the daily tasks that we know we need to do. We just don't do them whenever we're feeling down, right? So I try to focus to make sure I'm staying on point with my care. And then the one thing that helps me a lot, other than just saying screw it and walking away from my collection and going watch my boys play some soccer or going do something with my family that I really love. In the collection, what helps me is just pulling out some animals like the ones I just showed you and looking at some of the end products, some of these projects that I've been working on for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And kind of just absorbing that, you know what I mean? And saying, okay, we are getting somewhere, or we're going to change the game. We're going to make a difference, or whatever that is for you. That's kind of how I deal with it. And I clean, honestly. Whenever I'm feeling burnout, it's usually because my shop is not in order and I'm very OCD. And so like a lot of times if I just stop with the animals for a minute and catch up in my overall housekeeping, it makes my head better and I'm able to get back in gear. But yeah, that's kind of the best methods I've found. But for sure, the family time, I think that's something that not enough people step back and go find the other thing they love and do that for a minute. Because obviously this hobby is very consuming and all consuming, but we can't let it just be all that we are. You know what I mean? You got to have those other avenues to enjoy, to step away from the stress of the hobby as well. You know what I mean? But yeah, a good expo is always good too, though.
Before, so on that expo part, we did get a question in the chat. I believe he asked, it was from Bio. Oh, so how hard is it generally to vend a show? Because he's been thinking about doing it. So now, was it like for me? I know it's always like that initial cost. What about for you? What's like for you to vend a show? What's like how hard was it for you to get into the show circuit?
I mean, you got to get on the waiting list, first of all, whenever you decide, what show you want to do. Most of them have a little bit of a waiting list if they're a good show. So even if you're not ready right now, go ahead and throw your name in the hat on that because you can always tell them, oh, I'm not ready if they call you and say, hey, your name's up. You know what I mean? And just focus on quality animals because I think a lot of people try to rush it and go to their first show with like There are a couple of retired geckos that they want to move out of their collection and a couple of little bitty babies that they just hatched, and none of them look the quality that they should to go home to a new customer that doesn't have any experience and needs a gecko in their like prime condition. You know what I mean? That's one thing you got to think of if you're selling leopard geckos and fat tail geckos is you're not dealing with advanced keepers like a lot of y'all might, dealing with the more specialized species. You're dealing with the entry level keepers that, guess what? If we don't foster a great experience with that new keeper, they're never going to end up working with those more advanced species and climbing that ladder of the hobby. Like the way I look at it as far as the expos, and this is kind of going off on an offshoot, but like we've got to be that inspiration whenever we meet these kids. Whenever we put that first gecko in their hand, we've got to be somebody that really inspires them of like, hey, this is really cool, and maybe I need to get into this, because the more new people we have in this hobby, the stronger it will be at the end of the day. We got to have that constant influx. So that's something I focus on is education. I really, really focus on education at the expos. And so if you're doing an expo, go into it with the right mindset. Don't go into it with the mindset of, oh, I need to go sell a bunch of animals. Go into it with the mindset of, I want to go share my passion and educate the people that I meet this weekend about these awesome animals that I love so much and why I love them so much. And if you do that and you go in with that mindset, you will sell animals because people are going to, like that passion just bleeds off of you and bleeds into them. And then they're like, oh, I need one of these, and what better way for them to get into it than be able to learn from somebody that actually has a lot of them and a lot of experience with them, and not the drop shipper down the aisle that just bought a bunch of babies and is flipping them, right? That doesn't give a shit about them. Whenever somebody buys a gecko from me, they get a laminated care sheet that has a QR code linking them to the YouTube video of me explaining my care sheet, and they get
Nice.
those laminated care sheets have a little ID tag on the top, a little sticker that has my cell phone number on it and my email address and everything. And I tell people as I hand that to them, I'm like, look, I stand behind my animals 110%, but I can't fix a problem I don't know about. That's a line I tell every single customer, because I want to open that line of communication so that they feel welcome to reach out to me if they have anything at all. And that's something that has evolved from getting calls a year after selling a gecko and this customer being like, man, I don't know if this gecko's doing okay. And they send me a picture of this enclosure and this gecko that's just in the most horrible shape possible. And I'm like, did you even read the care sheet I gave you? And so I try to take as many steps as I can. I even sell starter kits as well. I do those front open enclosures that I talked about with the bioactives. I do them horizontally as well. So I have a handful of starter kits that I sell. If you're getting a gecko from me, you get them at a discounted price. So it gives people a low cost option to get a really good setup. But then the people that go buy the drop ship gecko, this is a really good method too that I figured out, because vending shows I would get a lot of people come and learn from me for an hour and then go and buy the $30 gecko that somebody's flipping off the table and then leaving, right? Or whenever I first started doing starter kits, I was doing them really low cost. And I would have those same people go buy that $30 gecko for somebody else and then come buy my starter kit that I intended for my customers to have a really low cost kit. So what I started doing is I started marking that kit up about $75 from that low cost mark. And then if you get a gecko from me, you get a $50 to $75 discount. So you get it almost at cost. But if you're going to buy that $30 gecko, you can come spend an hour with me and buy my starter kit. And I'm still making twice as much money off of that customer than the drop shipper made off of him for that $8 gecko that he bought and sold, right? And I'm getting paid for my time that I'm giving that customer at the expo. So what that has changed for me is it gives me a different mindset, because before I was in an angry mindset when I was dealing with that situation, because I was not angry, but just irritated, right? Because it's like, all right, you want all my knowledge, and I have lower cost animals that are in the $60 range. But you want to save a few dollars, so you're going to go buy this unhealthy animal that you're probably not going to have success with, right? So it's irritating. But now I'm in a different mindset of like, okay, that was your decision. I understand everybody's on a budget. Let me give you a little bit of my time and teach you the best way that I can to have a good foot forward in this experience with you. That way, hopefully they have a good experience and maybe decide they love leopard geckos, and then like me, realize that there's a whole different tier of quality of leopard geckos, and maybe they'll come back to me for the next gecko. I don't know.
Your shitty animal from the drop seller dies, they know
Right.
where they should have went and come back anyway, you know. So
Right.
you got
Right.
it. You're doing it right, man. It's methodical the
But
way you planned it
but
all
you don't
out.
have you don't definitely want to start out like that with all the starter kit and all that. I definitely do recommend. That's a big factor for me in selling geckos is having those starter kits. So once you can get to a point of carrying with you, or sometimes the dry goods supplier will work with you if you go to him at the beginning of the show and like, hey man, I want to sell some proprietary kits that I'm putting together with your goods. Will you let me build a couple kits and keep it at my table? And if I sell them, if I sell them, I'll pay you for them at the end of the expo. And if not, I'll bring you back all this dry goods and you'll have it for your stock. And as long as it's not shit that he's going to run short on, why would he not? If it's just more dry goods he's going to sell at the end of the day, and then you get to be that person building that kit and telling that person, here, this is how it needs to be, right? That's what I've done in the past sometimes. Because in my experience, you can't trust that dry goods vendor to set up the right kits for most animals, right?
Absolutely.
In some cases, that's not the case, but most cases, those dry goods vendors are just there to make their money off of their dry goods and get the hell out of there. And so that's something you can do if you don't want to haul around a bunch of glass like I do. But that's going to be a little more or less money for your time if you do it that route, because you're not going to be making a penny off of that starter kit. You're just going to have to pay all that money back to that dry goods vendor. The way I do it is a little bit more like it's a more of an ahead of time investment so that I can have a little bit more overall gamut at the expo.
So many
But
positives to that, man. Giving people a visual, you know, even if they're just looking and don't buy anything from anybody, they're seeing what they
yep,
need to do or what they should have. You're selling it. I mean, to go and get the stuff from the dry good guy, you're saving yourself a load to lug around with you. I mean, there's so many. I mean, you're clearly a good businessman. And for anyone out there that's vending or thinks about vending, you guys should really be taking notes right here, man. I mean, just some brilliant stuff, man. Some great advice, great tips. Get out there and do it, man. Be a positive influence in this hobby, man. You know, step up to the plate and start influencing people, man. Start exposing whatever species you're working with to the masses, man. You know, they're not going to do it themselves. I promise you. Gecko is not going to march his ass down to the local reptile show and teach the kids about them. Go do it.
for sure, for sure.
So let's get back on these African fat tails. So let's talk about this incubation process with them. What kind of stuff are you doing for that? Like temps, humidity,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
media, the incubation medium. Like what kind of
Yeah.
stuff are you using for that stuff?
So they are temp sex dependent, just like leopard geckos. They're not as consistent as leopard geckos, and they're a smaller window than leopard geckos. So the
Okay.
females I incubate at about 83 degrees. I've found below that they'll incubate almost full term, and then you'll lose a lot of babies if you're in that 80-degree range. So 83 is kind of my low, and I produce about 100% females at that temp. So 83, 84 is about 100% females, and then about 88 is, excuse me. About 88 is where I keep my male incubator at, and that produces about 80% males for me. When I was above that number, I was producing less males, so I think it kind of has a flip-flop effect, which is kind of how the leopard gecko world works as well. So 83 for females and 88 for males. And then in between that, obviously you would get a mix.
Okay.
Humidity, they need to be at 100% humidity all the time. I have found a major factor of tail truncations with fat tails is humidity fluctuations during incubation process. And what I mean by that is I used to have a certain setup where I would sometimes have to, or often I would have to add hydration to my cups throughout the incubation process. And I was having a very high percentage of sometimes slightly truncated tails, sometimes extremely truncated tails with horribly like messed up spines and just like real bad issues, right?
Yeah.
I thought it might have been a genetic thing. I wasn't sure, but in the evolution of my incubation, I've starting out the process with a much higher hydration rate. So I set the cups up the same way, and then I add 6 cc's of water. That way I've got like a quarter inch of water I use that clay substrate, the Pangea Hatcham.
Gotcha.
Which I'm kind of on the fence about that. I had a baby the other day dig down into it and kind of got like contusions all over his legs and stuff, and he's a high end fat tail, like kind of could be a world's first kind of thing. And so I'm like, oh.
Damn.
So I'm
Damn.
kind of rethinking my incubation process, even though I've hatched thousands of babies like this. That's the first one that's like gotten down in it and actually, I think, hurt himself a little bit, but he's okay. But anyway, so 83 to 88, 100% humidity. That's a major factor for the truncations. Once I've changed that process, I'm having very few truncations now. Even from animals that have truncated tails, I'm getting perfect tails. So I've determined that that is not genetic at all, or to my experience, it's not genetic at all. It's all about the incubation process. And then your duration is going to be about, your gestation on the females is about 2 weeks in between clutches, 2 to 3 weeks on average. And then the eggs, incubation is going to be about 45 days for males at that 88-degree temp, and about 65-ish for the females at that 83-degree temp.
Damn. That's just quick.
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
But
Couple months.
only thing I got quick like that is my Stropharis. Everything else, like, it's gonna be like a 3 to 4 month waiting period now.
Right?
Yeah.
Much
So,
cooler temps, too. That's pretty high incubation temps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the
I would
reptile.
say, what kind of incubator are you using? Are you doing some DIY or you got some?
Oh yeah.
Some.
Yeah, I've got a 6 foot wine cooler back there that I built.
Nice.
I had it for sale for a long time and nobody wanted to buy it, and I was like, all right, screw y'all, I'll keep it. So that's what I'm using.
Nice.
That's my female incubator. And here's a really important point that a lot of people miss. You see how much water bottles I have in that?
Yep.
Not just a few in the bottom. That is all about minimizing airspace. It's a lot of people just throw a couple of bottles in the bottom so they don't have that heat sink or whatever. But if you really get into the nitty gritty of it, the less airspace you have in a box. Did I lose you?
No,
You there?
you're breaking up and you're coming in and out, but
You're good now. You're good.
yeah.
Fuck,
Oh,
froze. No,
Freezing. Oh,
you got
Yeah.
two of you.
I don't know what happened.
Do you see
You
it? Are
hear
you
it?
seeing the two? Oh, there it goes.
Yeah. There we go.
Now he's gone. Jeez.
Damn, that shit was going too.
I wonder how much you paid for that wine cooler, man. That thing looked like a fucking Wilbanks, bro.
Yeah, that
There
looked
you
like
go.
a big old fridge I see in my schools. There he is.
We're back.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. So yeah, I've got that one that I use for my females, and then I've got a smaller version that I use for my males.
Okay.
But yeah, back to the water bottles. You know, it's all about reducing airspace in that box, because every time you open that box, every cubic inch of airspace gets evacuated with your room temp air. So the less airspace you have, the quicker that box is going to recover its air temp whenever you close it back. So that's really important if you have any kind of delicate species that can't tolerate a lot of temp fluctuations, to have a lot of something in there to absorb that temperature, because it takes a long time for a water bottle to change temps, but only a split second for that much air to change. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I've found is the best way. Those wine coolers have the best insulation, man. They do a really good job.
Okay. That's what's
You ever
up.
try to suspended incubation, like kind of like a sim style?
Not really. I've thought about it. I actually have a sim container that I picked up the other day with some other stuff I got. I have considered it because there's such a species that needs that high humidity the whole time. I might tinker with it a little bit because, like I said, I'm kind of rethinking things with that gecko that got down in that medium the other day.
How would you keep them from getting down there? Maybe the
Yeah.
suspended thing would work, but
Well, actually, I do suspend them. So the way I do them, watch, I'll show you. Most of mine, so each egg
how you doing?
is on this little plastic tray. I use single egg cups, and then I make these little trays. There's a baby in there. I make these little trays out of, like, it's called plastic canvas or yarn looms. It's like if you try to do like I can't think of the word. People use them in arts and crafts. They're called plastic canvas, but it's basically like a plastic sheet that's just, a grid shape, and I cut them to shape. I bought circular ones and cut them to the right size to fit where I wanted in those cups, and then I cut out a little divot in the middle for the egg to cradle in. And so the egg is suspended up above the rocks. Because I'm doing the oversaturated method, I don't want the egg touching wet rocks and absorbing too much water. I just want it in 100% humidity area. So that's the way I do that is I have it situated. It's basically got air underneath it because I make a little cavity in the rocks and I put that tray and then the egg sits on the tray. So all the egg is touching is the tray all the way around on the couple of points that touch the tray. And I've got hundreds of those that I've made whenever I was sitting out on the rig with nothing to do. Just I'd bring them with me to work and just sit there cutting them and making them. My rig buddies be like, "What are you doing, dude?" Working, man, working.
That's
'Cause
awesome.
I'm working here while I'm supposed to be working over here. It is what it is.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So what are like some of the misconceptions of African fat-tailed geckos?
Misconceptions that they only eat crickets. They do prefer crickets. I think that in the wild they eat a lot of faster moving like termites and grasshoppers and stuff like that. So they definitely do prefer crickets, but a lot of my geckos will eat dubia and worms, especially the females. And my babies, I raise my babies on dubia roaches.
Okay.
I guess a misconception is that they're extremely hard to keep when they're really not that much different than the leopard gecko to keep. They're a lot harder to breed, like we went over, for those couple reasons, like the baby, the truncations. Like I'm glad I grew as slow as I did because if I had had issues like that when I was producing 200 babies a year, I wouldn't have been able to like deal with it. It was like it. I went from like 60 to 80% tail truncations to like 5%.
Yeah. So can you kind of
So
explain that truncations? What is that?
It's just like a shorter tail. Like
Okay.
it's a shortened tail. So instead of it being long and tapered like it's supposed to be, and you can see it right at hatch. They'll either be short or like a bad kink or something. A lot of times, if it has a really bad truncation, it'll also be coupled with a little bit of a spinal kink right there at the hips.
Okay.
So most of them, if they had a really bad truncation, I would just sell them as a pet only.
Mhm.
But again, now that I figured out that it's not genetic at all, like most people still sell them as pet only for the truncated tails, but I've got some breeders that have truncated tails that produce 100% perfect tails. So, um, it's something that's just kind of at your discretion. I'm a big believer in breeding perfect animals, but something like that I've, in my own experience, determined is very much environmentally affected, or caused. I don't worry too much about that particular problem.
Okay. Nice. Go ahead.
But in the wild, they incubate in termite mounds, so they have a very stable environment in the wild. So it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
You know what I
Okay.
mean?
So I know you said with your boys getting ready to drive and everything, and they need some more money, obviously, cars, dates. What and you may be growing a little bit to fill up that time. What else? What are some goals you have for the future of your business? What do you plan on doing? Where's Huff's Herps in 5 years from now?
Honestly, my goal right now in the next year or two is to continue kind of downsizing and refining how many projects I'm keeping and working on and focusing more specifically on just a few projects like the Black Velvet project and like the AML, the couple of projects that I'm kind of more specific to. So my hope is to have overall less of a, you know, collection in variety. And again, working on this wall, I'm planning to kind of expand that to my leopard gecko collection as well. And I'm hoping that that's going to be, you know, kind of a game changer for me at least, as far as my enjoyment of everything. Because as much as I love this and as a passion, with it becoming full time, it definitely has become a job for me now. It has to be at this, at this
Oh,
level. So I want to try to. I guess that's the best answer to my question to your question is I want to try to get back to more of the keeping and enjoying side of things with as we move forward, and that's gonna come with, like I talked about, my boys getting in here and giving me hours. If I can get them dialed in doing what I'm doing, and then I have a helper as well that gives me like 20 hours a week usually. He's an archaeology major, um,
shit.
and
Nice.
he's going for his master's. So he gives me about 20 hours a week, mostly just taking care of the leopard gecko room and cleaning and feeding those guys and doing dishes as needed. But between him and both my boys, if I can get them running this whole building as it's running right now, and I can get back to making my living in the oil field, then whenever I'm off, I'll actually be able to work on specialty projects like building this wall or just enjoying things because they're already going to have shit dialed in. I'm not going to used to the way it was before is I would go to the oil field for a week or two and I had somebody helping me that would just kind of keep things alive basically and keep everybody situated. And then when I would get back, I would have so much catch up work to do with everybody that it was like 3 or 4 days of busting my ass and then a couple days relaxing and then 3 or 4 days of getting everything ready for me to be gone for another couple weeks. And then I go, and it was just a constant cycle. I want it to be more where when I come home, I can come here and have this set up as just like a man cave to come enjoy. And I'm able, but it's still a business in that it's making enough money to pay my boys and pay my helper to keep it running. And I'm not losing money on it. You know what I mean? It's paying for itself that way. And I can get back to the more enjoyment side of it. I know that's a really long question, a really long answer, and
No, that's
obviously,
perfect.
like I said, focusing more dialed in projects, like getting even more honed in on, okay, I don't need all of these geckos for all of these like genetic libraries. I've learned if I just hold on to a couple of males, that's a library alone for me because I can make new hets with all my wild caught female stuff and have my own, brand new group. So I'm kind of trying to reduce some of that so that I don't have as many numbers and I can get back, like I say, have it more dialed in like I want and get to this wall. I'm calling it my fat tail wall. The 15 cages that I'm working toward. Dude, I can't wait. I'm excited. I'm excited.
So what do you see like the future of Fat Tails? What do you see that as the hobby? Where do you see that going like the next, like you said, 5 years?
I think that all depends on if more people kind of get really obsessed with them and they start getting more exposure because as you can see, there's some really cool stuff to work with. And we already know how
Okay.
cool they are and easy to keep they are. So they're very, very easily could be in the mainstream kind of topic. You know what I mean? And so if there were more people really putting some effort into them and some focused effort, not just here's a main factor with Fat Tails is over the last couple of decades, there's been a lot of breeders just like really trying to pump out numbers of these morphs. And it hasn't done any justice to the animal itself because you've got some issues with some of these morphs and you got some genetic depression here and there. So I feel like if more people will really take it in more of an approach like I'm trying to give it of like really focusing on line breeding some stuff and holding back animals and improving things and breeding perfect animals to perfect animals and not worrying about that, trying to make a buck with them and just really getting passionate with them. I think that it could become a lot more. And I think there's a lot more to be learned with these guys and a lot more to be done as we're seeing with some of these projects that are working in my collection. Obviously everybody needs a black fat tail. Let's be clear there. That's just, that is the future of fat tails. Everybody's going to need a
Has
black
anyone
fat tail in
else
their
produced
collection.
them? Are you the only one that's produced them? Have those popped up in anyone else's collection?
There's one girl in Vietnam that showed some a few years ago. I need to message her back because I haven't seen her post any in the last 2 seasons. Or in the last season at least. But I'm definitely the only one in the States with them. And I've got a side project that I'm already planning with that Black Velvet project that's gonna hopefully it's gonna be a red fat tail, dude. It's gonna be a red fat tail.
You said it's gonna
That's
be a
that's
red
my
fat
goal with
tail?
that project. A red fat tail.
Dude, I'm so
Ooh, that's
excited
gonna be
for you,
dope.
man. That's gotta be
I'm not gonna get I'm not gonna get too deep. I'm not gonna get too deep into it, but it's gonna be called the Red Velvet Project, and it's gonna be a brake light red fat tail. I've got
Nice.
a
Oh,
concept. I've got a
I like that.
concept. I've got a concept that I've been working on and thinking on, and I really think it's gonna work out. So stay
I'm
tuned
rooting
for that.
for you, brother. I'm definitely
Oh
rooting
yeah,
for you.
man.
That's
Definitely.
cool. I mean, I hope
So
that
I
people see this, that this helps change the hobby, man. Because from what I've seen over the last couple days, there's no reason. I mean, there's more allure to this species being so the morphs and the traits being so young in the hobby and so little being done that this is really like something that people could, not to steal your shine, but you could hop on board and find something new
dude,
yourself, man. Get in here,
dude,
start refining
listen.
some of this stuff, start doing this.
Well, you know what? Talk about steel and shine. That's one of the great things about this species is it doesn't worry me at all to hook somebody up with some amazing animals that I know they're going to do well with because their production rate isn't crazy high like a leopard gecko, and they take longer to grow out. So I know if I sell a high end trio to somebody, they're not going to be producing 50 of those same things in a year and
Yeah.
competing with me like this and cutting my throat on prices. They're going to have to put in some time and effort and love to that project to get where I'm at. So it's not something that I feel threatened at all to be like, hey, come on, people, because like we need more people loving them and working with them, because once it gets to the point of enough people working with them to where you're needing different puzzle pieces for different projects that people are coming up with, then that's when it really gets moving and gets to be something that's buzzing, you know? Um,
Absolutely.
and yeah, I think the sky's the limit with them, honestly, dude.
I do too.
I've always loved them. And I think that there's, like I said, I'll keep saying it. There's a lot to be done with them. There's a lot to be learned about them, and they're just awesome. They're gorgeous. I love them.
This is kind of following suit, like how the ball pythons came out with a lot of the first morphs and stuff. There was a lot of traction there, and then not far after did it start happening with the boas and the berms and the everything
Yeah,
else.
yeah,
They found
yeah.
these couple of handfuls of genes, and people started seeing what could be done. Fast forward 15 years, and it's like, whoa, like you are on the same road right here with the leopard geckos, and this turning into the next big thing, man. There's enough morphs and traits for people to go crazy with, man.
Yeah, no,
It's,
I agree. I agree.
and
Um,
lower production to keep value higher. I mean, it's a good, perfect
yep.
storm is brewing here.
Yeah, there's a few
Oh
people
yeah.
out there really pumping them out, and more power to them. Whatever. I don't agree with that business model of pumping out numbers and selling them at wholesale prices, but you get what you pay for in this hobby is the way I look at it a lot of times, and not just in the quality or visual quality of the animal, but the handleability of the animal. My animals are pretty well started and pretty well socialized whenever they leave my care. I keep them until they're pretty good size. Um,
Coming closer up
but
to the
yeah.
end, I got my closeout. And you want to go ahead and hit them up with your closeout real quick?
Can I just ask one more question first before I will? I have a good closeout,
Go
my
ahead, brother.
regular closeout question, but I got one more question for you.
Yeah, what's
You had
up?
mentioned earlier in the podcast, and you just touched on it again. When you sell these animals, you have them. What do you do with your animals before you sell them? You keep them a little older? Are you handling them? How are you giving these people these animals that you had mentioned, giving them a more handleable, better off, established, more socialized animal? What is all that?
That's a great question, man. There's a few things that I do. First of all, by not producing thousands of animals, by keeping it really, I mean, 300 seems like a lot, but there's a lot of leopard gecko breeders out there that 1,000 is nothing for them.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not a mass production facility. So by doing that, we're able to not fly through the collection whenever we're cleaning and feeding. Not that we're sitting there for an hour with each gecko. We don't have time for that, but it's not a crazy, like, experience for them. We open we take them out of their tub, we hold them for a split second, take care of their cage, put them back in. It's not like a flying through it kind of deal. Another thing we do is we grow them out to a certain point. About 15 grams is pretty much my minimum. Um, and that's for a leopard gecko about 2 or 3 months, and for a fat tail gecko about 4 to 6 months. Um, and another thing that I do that I think is pretty unique to my animals is I don't shy away from their tails. As soon as they're old enough to start handling, I touch their tail regularly. And once they're getting to that close enough age to be selling, I will actually kind of use their tail as a tool to kind of move them around and get them used to that sensation. And my theory behind that is if I can desensitize them a little bit before I sell them to an 8-year-old, it's that much less likely to happen in their hands. If that gecko already has felt that sensation, not that it won't happen. I have had some customers say their gecko lost their tail, but it's much less likely to happen in my opinion and in my experience, because I have hardly any drop tails in my collection. So that's another little thing that I do that's kind of unique. And just have them on at peak health, man. If I have a gecko that's for sale and I'm going through the collection and she didn't eat her crickets and it's because she's ovulating, she gets a red dot on her tub. She doesn't come to the next expo. Like, I know she's just ovulating. I know she's fine. I know she's going to come out of it in a few weeks and start eating. But if a customer messages me and says, hey, this gecko's not eating, my first response damn well better not be, oh yeah, she wasn't eating whenever I brought her. She's in ovulation. You know what I mean? Like my first question is always, or my first statement is always, that gecko was in perfect health. Let's start troubleshooting because she should be eating. You know what I mean? I don't want to have in the back of my mind, oh, well, she didn't eat the last time I saw her, so maybe, that's just not how we operate. Um, my my
Great
my
efforts, man. You
my
really did.
motto has always been just to like not leave anything behind me to have to look over my shoulder. I try to take really good care. It's my family first, my animals second, my customers third. Is how I've tried to run this business as far as the business side of things.
Well,
That's
right now,
awesome.
you are convincing a lot of people in the chat to get some African fat tails.
Yeah, I see him popping up too, man. A lot of
Bring it
people are
on,
excited, man.
bring it on.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We got lots of availables for sure. I don't have the chat up because my ADD
There you
won't let me
go.
watch that shit. I wouldn't be focused on the conversation.
It's distracting too, man. I have ADHD,
Oh, dude, I
man. I'm
can't.
like
I can't. Well, yeah, I got ADHD and
all over
OCD
the
combined.
place.
It's bad, dude. Um, but yeah, that was a good question, dude. That's the answer to that is grow 'em up well and handle them, as much as you can so that they're not crazy.
Awesome. You don't
And
get
I
that
know
with
which ones
everybody,
are
you know?
crazy. I know which ones are crazy on the table too. So if somebody walks up to me and they're like, "Hey, I want one for this 10-year-old daughter of mine." I'm not going to let them pick out those couple that are wild. I'll steer them towards the ones that are more gentle and outgoing. Whereas if somebody walks up and they like a gecko and I'm like, "Hey, by the way, that one's nuts." They're like, "I like a challenge." I'm like, "Go for it." That's where that gecko needs to end up is in that home, not the little 10-year-olds.
It's awesome,
Uh,
man. That's unique in itself, man. Oh, keeping them to the age you do gives you that opportunity to know your animals a
exactly.
little bit more. And
Exactly.
I commend you, dude, so much, man. Like you run a badass business, dude. Like I love the
Oh,
way you
yeah.
do
Thank you, Anthony.
everything you've described, man.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So go ahead and ask your last question, man. Go ahead.
All right.
Do the
So my
closeout.
last question, I usually ask everybody this, man, and most of the guys I talk to are pretty deep into the reptile thing, and we've all been here, so might as well ask if you could give one piece of advice to a, you know, 10, 11-year-old out there that wants to grow up and not work a regular job, he wants to breed reptiles for a living and do what you do. What advice would you give that 10-year-old?
I've got two pieces of advice actually, if I can. The
Rock
first
out.
is find what you love and latch on to it. Find your actual passion. Don't just buy shit to buy shit. Don't just don't decide like if you get into leopard geckos, the most common question we get is what's the most popular morph? I want to breed something that's going to sell. And my answer is always work with what you like because if you like it, you're going to have passion for it and you're going to move it if you need when you need to sell it. So that's my first piece of advice is work with what you love, find what you love and work with it. Dive into it. And that's kind of what I've done with the fat tails. I'm not a big multi-species. I have some other stuff, but it's just for pets or like really small projects. And the other piece of advice is start small and grow slow. That's something that I stress to every single person that buys geckos from me. I don't know how many times I could have sold geckos that I was like, man, like, not that I tell them not to, but I just remind them like, hey, dude, you remember how I told you need to grow slow? Maybe you don't need a fifth female leopard gecko for your first season. Like, I've got buddies that I've had to have that talk with, and like, I'm a horrible salesman in that right. Like, there's all kind of people that are always like coming to my table and man, I want this, and I'm like, man, this is your first season you're coming on, and I talk sense into them because I don't want them getting overwhelmed because then they're just going to be a one season in and out because we see so much of that. So start small and grow slow. Did I lose y'all again?
Great advice, man. Great advice. I wish I listened to both of those pieces of advice when I got into this, but great advice.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Definitely. So, my last question is he frozen?
No, is he? No, he's not.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I was thinking
it's
of
trying a
frozen.
little bit right now.
All right. So I'll get you out of here after this one. Last question for me is always, what has been like your biggest failures of being in this hobby, and what have you learned from those?
Biggest failure?
Yeah. It doesn't even
Who
have
you
to
got?
be African fat tail related. It could be anything that's part of this reptile hobby, man.
Oh no! What the fuck just happened?
What's wrong? You still got me?
Oh
You
god.
good?
Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
here. I did some retard. I just got this computer, man. I'm so sorry. A little thing popped up on the corner. I tried to use my touch screen to be slick about it, and it opened something.
So biggest failure, I haven't really revealed this to more than just a few people, but I'll go ahead and come out with it because it's been enough time that I think I can talk about it and not not tear up about it. About a year ago, after an expo, I had a bunch of vehicle trouble on the way home and got home really late and was really tired. And instead of coming all the way to the shop and putting everybody up, I stayed home for the night to come do it in the morning. And I keep my garage a certain temp. And so that's the warmest place in my house because I keep my bugs in there, all my dubia roaches in there. So I put them in the garage. I keep them in styrofoam boxes to go to and from the expos. And cocked their lids open so they had some good air and went to bed. And when I woke up, I realized that I had put them on a table that was too close to the oil radiator heater that keeps that garage warm. And y'all know what heat does to these guys in overheated situations. And we lost a lot of animals in one night, man. That was by far my biggest failure in all of this. And it put me in a very, very dark spot for a little while, man. It was rough. Actually, following that, I lost a few of my breeder females due to my depression following that. And one of those is actually my mascot that's on my logo. And she's one of my best Mango Project animals that I ever produced, man. And she was right in the heat of her season when that shit happened. And I failed her in that most critical fucking time, dude. And, it was rough, dude. It was really rough. It was 33 animals total that I lost that night. It was 22 fat tails, I think a dozen leopard geckos, and some gargoyle geckos. I think 4 gargoyle geckos. I might have my main number off, but it was really, really hard to deal with.
Enough for nothing. You pulled through it.
And made me question everything.
I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but
yeah, for real though.
Made me question.
Yeah.
Made me question everything that I'm doing. And dude, my wife finally told me I had to pull my head up.
Would have broke 90% of it.
My wife told me I had to pull my head up my ass and get back to the animals, dude, because I wasn't doing what they needed. I still had 400 animals that relied on me and dwelling on those 30 whatever that I lost wasn't doing them any good, dude. And it was a long process. It was a long process of pulling myself out of that gutter for sure. But that's also what kind of spawned or fueled this naturalistic approach that I'm trying to work on, because it really made me take a different look at everything that I'm doing and how I've been doing it and how I want to do it moving forward. And I mean, just at the end of the day, we have to do the absolute best we can for these guys, And so that's really what I took from it as a positive, is opening my eyes to like really, really, really putting the time and energy and the resources into upping my game on how I'm keeping everything, just because they deserve it, man.
You got a strong woman right back that's backing you up, man. So
that's awesome, man. That's cool.
Yeah,
she got your back like
for
that.
her.
Support you with this whole
No,
thing.
she's amazing, man. She's absolutely amazing.
That's awesome.
I definitely wouldn't be here without her, for sure. Not where we at right now, for sure.
So where can everybody find you at, man?
It's easy, man. Huff Herps, everything. Huff Herps on YouTube, Huff Herps on Instagram, Huff Herps on Facebook. I kept it simple. My Morph Market, same thing. Type in Huff Herps, it should come up. I got lots of available stuff on there. Everything's free shipping. I factor that cost into the cost of the animal, so you don't have to. You look at that number, and that's to get it to your door. Unless it's like extreme weather shipping, which I have
my damn self.
I got a little bit of extra charge for an extreme weather setup that I can do in those times that I need to, but normally the typical shipping's already factored in there. But yeah, Huff Herps on everything. It's pretty simple to find me. My YouTube channel, that's one thing I'm really trying to start motivating myself to put time into. I'm trying to make that an educational source for fat tails. That's all that's on there right now is videos about fat tail breed incubation and keeping and just certain things. I'm going to do a morph episode on there soon to put all the genetics down so that it's not just in podcasts like this, but that it's all right there in one spot on my channel. Just because there's nothing out there, dude. There's absolutely no information out there that's specifically about the fat tails. So that's something that I really have a hard time with. I'm my own biggest critic. And so I have a hard time sitting down and putting shit on video and like not overthinking it. So I'll get over that eventually. And
You do
try to
that,
get some
kid.
content
You're
out there.
natural. It comes natural to you. You appear very fluid with this. We just get people sometimes that it's like, prying teeth out of their mouth, to get an answer to a question. I mean, you do this very smooth, so it's good, very good. If we missed
Thank you.
anything, guys, go check his YouTube page out. If it was a question maybe we didn't ask that you're looking for an answer for, it's probably on his page, man. There was so much that me and Jay wanted to ask, and we just don't have the time to do it live.
Oh, definitely.
Check out his
We're gonna have a
YouTube
part two.
page. Check out his Instagram. Check him, the man out, dude. He's a very unique keeper, man. Just go to his page, check him out, support him any way you can.
Appreciate that, guys.
Jay froze? Are you froze, Jay?
I think he is.
Hurt or
There
not
we go.
hurts. I'm here. It's just connecting. Like I said, we're gonna have a part 2 on this because I remember we're talking in the DMs that you had some different thoughts on feeders. So I definitely want to get into that with you. So we'll definitely do a part 2 and we'll get this going. But
Yeah,
right now,
I'm a big advocate about gut loading. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Yep. So I'll say, everybody, have a great night. Sorry, Matt, your Packers lost. My Eagles won. Peace. Stay on real quick after we get off this live. All right, man?
Yo, creeping in the dark, life nocturnal, dark and dark, both paths arboreal to terrestrial. Sticky toes gripping forest students that explore. Listen close, Gecko podcast, that's knowledge galore. Reptile talk, host Anthony and Jason. Trade secrets flow, no time wasted. From tropics to town, it's sight raining. With every chat, reptile game changing. Escaping heat waves, tan under rays, desert sand echoes, sun blazing days. Little hustlers, camouflage and maze, catch them speaking wisdom, the wild on replay. Reptile talk, host Anthony and Jason. Trade secrets flow, no time wasted. From tropics to town, it's sight raining. With every chat, reptile game changing. Sculling through the leaves, shadows unseen. Master of the skies, chameleon dream. Lizard tails flip, script getting clean. Gecko exchange, true reptile fiends. Reptile talk, host Anthony and Jason. Trade secrets flow, no time wasted. From tropics to town, it's sight raining. With every chat, reptile game